Yeah, hello, welcome to a new video. This will be part, I think, 7 of the E4, E5 Repertoire series for black. And this will be about the Scotch game, which is, of course, the position seen here after 3d4. This video will be about the lines in the Scotch, which are not the Scotch 4 knights. Yeah, so we won't look at this position here. This will be done in the next video. I didn't want to make this so long, so I split it up. So this is part 8 then, to be done very soon. And now this part 7 deals with the stuff arising here. Also, I'll show you briefly what to do against bishop c4, which is also sometimes played. This will be at the end of the video. Another alternative here would be c3, which after d5 transposes into this Danish gambit. I already did this in an earlier video. So it's all about takes, knight takes. And here black has two main moves and one slightly offbeat move. The two main moves are knight f6 and bishop c5. And according to current theory, they're both fine for black. But if you look at this, you'll notice that the very open position here, I mean, d4 is sort of the open game of the open games. It's really open. So there are quite a number of possibilities available for both sides after both bishop c5 and knight f6. It's very complicated and very tactical. And I didn't want to make a 2-hour video on the Scotch only. So I'm actually recommending the move that I play myself. At least I play it not all the time, but at least it's my favorite move in Blitz and also in tournament games. I already tried it out. This is bishop to b4 check, which yeah, looks a bit weird at first sight, because it sort of checks into thin air here. But it's quite an interesting move, and it has got some nice points. First of all, let's get out of the way what happens if white responds with uncommon moves. Of course, he needs to deal with the check. So what moves are there? He can play knight c3, which doesn't happen so often, curiously, but it's not too bad. And then black had the chance or the choice to go here, which transposes into the Scotch 4 knights, to be shown in a later video. This is the sound and solid choice. Black can also play here, which is quite interesting. The idea is quite simple. This pawn is attacked now, and black will win this pawn. I mean, this just wins a pawn, but it is quite risky. I can show you a sample line. White could take here, takes here. Now black cannot grab on g2 because this here attacks the queen, and then this knight can get out again, and b4 is also hanging. So this is not working. But black can, of course, simply recapture on c6, for instance with the queen here, castles. And then black has won a pawn, but it's a bit behind in development. It's playable, absolutely. I have seen it played by a grandmaster already when I was was actually playing the same match in the Dutch league. So it's playable, but it's a bit risky. You can play that if you feel like, well, I'll take this and you show me if it's working. Okay, this is one possibility, but knight f6 here is always a safe and simple transposition. The bad move is bishop d2. It's really bad. Queen e7 now sends white into problems. This is just much worse than before compared to knight c3, because now e4 is hanging, d4 is hanging. And I mean, here black even has a choice. He can grab a pawn with this move, or he can grab here and win a pawn, and this is just no compensation. So bishop d2 is just bad, but about close to 99% of the time c3 is played. And then black retreats to c5. And now you could ask, what is the idea of giving this check first and after c3 dropping back, when you could have played bishop c5 immediately, one move earlier on move 4. There is a difference, and the difference is that now with a pawn on c3, white doesn't have the general possibility to play knight c3, which very often is exactly the square where you want to put the knight, and now there's a pawn there. The clearest example for this is if white takes here, which is actually the main line. I will show this in more detail later. Black recaptures. And in these kind of positions, white really would like to play knight c3 at some point, or at least have the option to do so, and now he doesn't. And this pawn somewhat hinders his development. Very often he needs to put the knight here or here, and this is not an ideal place. So this is an extra tempo for white, but it's actually debatable if it's useful. So this is not the refutation knight takes c6. I mean, this line cannot be refuted anyway, but I mean, here c3 is no big deal. Also, one point is white plays here, black drops back, and in these kind of positions white also would like to play knight c3, queen d3 and long castle, and he cannot because there's a pawn on c3. This pawn is really very often a nuisance for white. It's not a useful extra move. So, but let's get into the concrete lines here. After bishop c5, as I mentioned, white has quite some options. First, let's look at some really bad option, but which is nevertheless played once in a while, which is knight f5. It's quite a tempting move because this g7 pawn is attacked, and this could actually be quite interesting if black would need to protect this pawn, but as it turns out he doesn't need to. Black has a very good move here in d6, which simply attacks this knight. Black would simply take it if white does a neutral move here, like bishop b3 or something. So white usually grabs here, king f8, so it's a gambit. And now white has two possibilities. He can go here or to h5. If he goes here, black just captures and goes queen to h4 with an attack on f2, and black also has got rook e8 coming, and this is just a huge attack. Notice the huge lead in development. Black has got 3 pieces out in active positions and black has got nothing. White has got nothing developed, so this is very fine for black. Knight f5 is quite bad. This is somewhat better, but still very nice for black. You have this queen h4 move again, and this also threatens on f2, and this also, so white pretty much needs to retreat here. Knight f6, threatening here, so white plays here. Notice that white can easily get completely thrashed if he's got just one more inexact move. Let's say here, you already have stuff like this coming up, and black wins instantly. So it's already quite dangerous. So knight f6, here, and then a move like knight e5 to renew this idea to go to g4. Black has just a very nice position for the pawn. I mean, usually white players get into this by accident. They don't voluntarily want to get under an attack. So knight f5 is no thing to worry about. So what else? White could simply develop a piece like here, but this doesn't threaten much, like knight f6. And you simply continue developing with castling, rook to e8, stuff like this. In this kind of positions, you really notice the pawn on c3 is just badly placed. White would really like to put a knight on c3 also to control d5, but he cannot. very often you get stuff like this, let's say castles. I mean, maybe you could even take here, but this could be risky. Let's say here, here, here. And now it's already a bit ugly on e4. Knight d2, I can win a pawn on d4. So black has no problems at all. He will just continue with the move of the d-pawn and develop further. So this is pretty harmless, stuff like bishop to c4. So the main moves by far are knight takes c6 and bishop e3. So knight takes c6 is the main move, so let's look at bishop e3. Of course, now white threatens knight takes c6, so a move like this here, oops, would lose a piece, so need to be cautious. What black is doing is simply retreating to b6, where it is posted nicely here on b6. So what should white do now? The only move really posing a problem is queen to g4, which is Kasparov's invention. He played this first, as far as I'm aware. But let's look at the quieter moves. One not so quiet move is knight to g4, knight to f5 here. This is a bit different because now we have those bishops facing off each other. So g6 is so d6 is a bit questionable because white could for instance play something like this here and now take, and then you lack this attacking bishop on b6. This is not so good in comparison. So black plays not d6 but g6. This is better. So now what should white do? If he just retreats to d4, he lost 2 moves. g6 is not the greatest move in the world, but it's still a tempo. So yeah, what should be done here? White doesn't have much better than capture on b6 here, and then return to e3. Black then just develops some protecting move like bishop d3 and castles. And now black's idea is simply to play rook e8 and maybe d5. Note that in these kind of positions knight c3 would be a good move, but white cannot move the knight to c3. This pawn is just annoying hindrance here. So it's not dangerous. White could also go to c3, and in this position there's just one thing to remember, that it is better not to take on e3 but to continue development here. The thing is, if you take on e3, which is not completely terrible, but I'll show you here. I'm not sure, maybe here. The idea is that white might set up a position with c4, knight c3, and these kind of positions are still okay for black, but you'd rather have it somewhat different, like here, and then if white takes at some point and sets up the same kind of structure, then it's quite nice to have the A file open for some counterplay. So you just wait until white captures on b6. Also, with this capture on e3 and knight takes e3, you help him strengthening the d5 point. You don't want to do that. So just wait until white captures himself. Okay, this is knight c3, c2. So queen g4. This was for a while considered to be a problem for black, but now it turns out that black doesn't need to fear this move at all. You even have a choice between an aggressive continuation and a solid continuation. The aggressive continuation is knight f6 here, just sacrificing this pawn, so white grabs it. Not much choice, otherwise knight g4, queen g4 doesn't make any sense. Rook here, You just attack the queen constantly. And here black can take on d4. I mean, there are also alternatives, yeah, but I'm just showing one line. Here, if white would take with the bishop, you have this nice tactic with the idea queen takes, rook e6, and white resigns. Or not resigns maybe, but close to it. You're just in huge trouble on the e-file. So take here, and then black can open up the position with d5. And there are lots of little tricks here based on the queen and those somewhat strangely placed pieces. I'm just showing a sample line here. I mean, there are alternatives, but yeah, black just has a nice active position here, and most likely will get material back. For instance, some move like here is quite unpleasant to say the least. So here, and this concrete position actually is a draw by repetition, because you chase this queen eternally. So this is an active possibility, and one where you could easily find some new ideas if you analyze. I think black is very active. But if you don't like this, or this is just too sharp for your taste, you can play the standard move queen to f6 also. Then white goes here to get out of this discovery idea. And here in the original game, which Kasparov played, the black player actually decided to grab this pawn, which is I mean, risky, and against Kasparov it amounts to suicide. So no good idea to take this. But you can simply play this move, and black doesn't have any particular problems. This position might be slightly better for white, but even that I'm doubting really. Black can just develop knight to f6 or e6. F6 looks a bit more active. Knight f6, d6, and so on. Just develop your pieces. One thing you need to be aware of, this kind of standoff of the queens. Both sides don't really want to take, because it would open the h-file. So it's an idea for black to wait until white maybe has castled. But you have some useful moves, knight f6, d6 as I mentioned, and you just wait until castles, and then you can even take if you want. So this is also a possibility, not a big deal. So this whole bishop e3 complex is not too dangerous. Very often you can do with just normal development and sensible moves. I think the more dangerous option here is for white to take. Here, bishop b3. This is, I think, the main test of black's setup. And here you have a choice again. Here you can play a sound and solid move, or a somewhat shaky move, let's say, where you can set white some concrete and not so easy to solve problems, but which is maybe a bit risky. Let's go for the safe and solid move first. This is a move like knight e7 or maybe also d6. These are very much related. Let's say here, the general idea is that black now wants to complete its development and intends to play castles, and then something like d6 and f5 or d5 according to the circumstances. I mean, this structure in general should favor white slightly. It's got a little bit more space, simpler development, and it's just a slight advantage for white maybe. But it's nothing that you should be so hugely afraid of. If you play e4, e5, this is a pretty normal looking position. The more interesting move though is queen h4, which this is a move that I could only recommend to people who are actually willing to maybe do some analysis on their own, because it's really a tricky tricky continuation. It's a very good move for blitz games, because people are very often a bit too quick with their response here. The most dangerous move by far here for black is queen e2. And the thing is, very often people, especially in blitz games, they just castle. And after knight f6, this is already close to a quite dangerous attack for black. Because this somewhat crude knight g4 is a huge threat. And this can easily get ugly for white. I mean, just a sample line. Let's say move like h3 here. You can think about, okay, and this is, I didn't analyze this before, so if this is complete bogus, I'm sorry, but just to show one idea here. If white takes now here, I've got this setup. Or here, and it's a complete mess, but it's most likely, I mean, queen e2, yeah, queen e2 is possible. Alright, so I didn't prepare this in detail before, but you see that there are lots of pieces pointing towards the king, and this d5 move is not mandatory. You can just play d6, threaten bishop h3, or you can also just castle. So the castle here on move 8 by white is actually a bit meek here, at least. Maybe it's even bad. Queen e2 is a stronger move, and we will see why. Yeah, of course, black wants to develop his pieces, so plays knight f6. And here white has a strong move, which is h3. And this shows the problem of this position, because this queen here, it looks very active on h4, but it also has quite a problem with finding squares. At the moment, the queen doesn't have any square besides h5. Everything else is controlled by white pieces. And you can see the consequences if you look at, for instance, a move like castles here. White goes g3, queen here, and g5, g4. And now you really don't know what this queen is doing. If you go here, you even have to consider this with the idea of knight f3, and the queen is trapped. And if you go into the middle of the board, then g5 is also a move that is not too welcome for black. This knight only has e8 as a square, and this already looks like something has gone wrong. Black is just on the defensive here. All his stuff is getting pushed back. So black is a little bit playing with fire in this variation. The move which might make this playable, and notice that I'm saying might, because this is just based on analysis and it has never been tested in a game. I mean, it has been tested in a game of mine, but it's not like there's a ton of theory in this. Here, this is the problem of d6. If white doesn't go e5, black has no problem. For instance, let's say here, black can just capture, and I think just castle, because it just helps black that one pair of pieces here has been exchanged, so that this queen is not such a huge problem anymore. Bishop b3 is a bit lame though. I mean, the real point is e5. And here, I actually had this in a tournament game about a year ago, a little bit more. And I was trying to figure this out at the board. And here I made a mistake, actually, but it's difficult. The move that black should play is knight d5. What I played is not good. I could have easily gotten a lost position. I played knight g4. The idea is that here takes here with check. Black has got bishop e6, and now I mean f2 is very much hanging, so castles here. And now bishop b6. This is what I saw in the game, and I thought, okay, maybe this is okay. But white has got this very annoying move, and this actually leaves black with a terrible position. We didn't reach this in the game. He played something else before because he didn't see this move. Or he maybe saw it but didn't evaluate the consequences correctly. And this is terrible for black. So you cannot go knight g4 as I did in the game, but knight d5. And this is actually interesting. In order for white to have something, I think he needs to grab this pawn here. It's with check after all. Yeah, what should black do? Not much choice. I think he just needs to go here. And now black actually has got this threat, and this is a huge threat. A threat you need to attend to, because you cannot interpose on e3, all pieces are on there. So this is really a thing that white needs to look at. The best move is castles here. If white actually decides to grab the pawn, this is questionable. If now castles, black can even take here, and it's at least a draw with this kind of idea. So here castles is the best move, and then black doesn't have much better than taking here. Then maybe queen to f3, attacking f7 and keeping an eye on the c6 pawn. Yeah, and this kind of position should be somewhat better for white. It's not so terrible. At first I thought this is really bad for black, but it's not entirely clear. Black can play rook e8, for instance, and it's not so obvious how white should continue here. Black still has got some tricks available. Let's say white would take here. Then you can just gain a tempo and secure the king a bit, and you've got everything pointing towards the king side. It's pretty much unclear, maybe something to analyze. But here white of course has got multiple possibilities. He could also go here and here, directly attacking this formation. Here black actually could go queen to f6 and try to exchange queens, which should be quite okay. I mean, this position is a bit shaky for black, and I would only advise to play it if you have studied it a little bit more. I think it's playable. It's risky though, but you need to be aware that white has to play all those moves to get there, even this one. Notice if white doesn't go here, he's got one alternative. He could also, instead of playing e5, play g3 and here. And this is similar to what we saw before. The difference is that this move now is just punished with bishop g4, so he cannot harass the queen further, and it actually ends up with a queen trade. So white takes here, and this position is somewhere between equal and maybe a little bit better for white, but it's nothing too dramatic. Those little pawn moves are an advantage for white if you manage to really set these pawns into motion, but it could also easily be weakening, f3, h3 and so on. So this is not too clear, but it's playable. I mean, one general advantage of this line compared to the Scotch main lines is that you can basically play a game of chess from move from move 10, because it's not so theoretically well explored. If you look a bit at this yourself, then you might have a really advantage over your opponent, because he doesn't know anything about the line at all. Very often this is the case, even with strong players. So this is a difference to the main lines. There often the theory really kicks off at move 10, and here you can get along with somewhat less learning effort. So yeah, this is actually bishop b4 check. A pretty economic solution to the Scotch opening, which might be, compared to main lines, not 100% equal compared to the main lines, but it's also much less work to invest, and very often you get your opponents by surprise and earn yourself quite a nice position. What I'd like to mention is that here there's also another possibility, which is bishop c4. I want to show this briefly. There's not much you need to know, but it happens. Here black has two moves at his disposal, sorry, which is knight f6 and bishop c5. And what you play there pretty much depends on what you play on the Italian game, which is this one, which we will look at later. If you play this move, you need to study this position, which arises also in the other move order. And if you play the regular Italian game, you need to play this position as black, and this also arises in the other move order. So to make this clear, let's say here, knight f6, we saw this before, it's the same as in the two knights. But what I'm actually recommending is bishop c5, which is also my recommendation against the Italian game. And this looks very fine to me. If white now plays c3, which is the best move, then knight f6 just transposes to the regular Italian game. And this is yeah, quite equalish opening, where black doesn't have anything to fear at all. So no worries, just a transposition. And the alternatives are not so great for white. He can castle, which is the most popular move, and also this one is sometimes played, but this is nothing to fear. You can even play knight to h6, covering f7, and if white now goes into this typical kind of operation here, in this position black actually has a very strong move in d5. This can be easily missed, so it's good to remember this idea. The idea is that this is actually really bad. Check here, and rook e5, and black gets back d5, which is a huge advantage. His king is much safer here than white's king, and black has got all his pieces out. So this is just bad for white. And if he takes with the queen, you can exchange and play here, getting something like this, which is also just better for black. So this whole operations with knight g5 is not really good. Usually white goes here, or c3 being the best move, but this is also a possibility. Then you can play d6, and this seems very nice for black. Let's say c3, the only move really to justify this play. Then bishop g4 is quite good for black. You're pinning the knight so that you actually protect the d4 pawn. And if white goes for some immediate attack on f7, you just ignore this. You can take here. And this is very nice for black. For instance, if he goes here, you recapture here, and now black has a strong move which you really should remember. This is g5. This is very strong. It just secures that the king side stays permanently weak. White cannot go f4 or something, and black has got ideas of queen shifts here. Oh, no, not here. More to h6, or knight to f4, something like this. White's king side is just terribly weakened. In this kind of position, you could easily imagine black having enough compensation for pawn, and here is not even a pawn down. So this is just bad. If white recaptures immediately, then you have also some nice possibilities. For instance, take here, which brings this idea into play. So white has not much choice. At one point he has to take here. Knight takes here, here, attacking f3, and you can see that black is just fine here. He's got equal material, and white's king is just in a bit of trouble. He's much unsafer compared to white's king. So this whole line doesn't really bring much for white. So right, this was the Scotch game. The next video, as mentioned, will be about the related opening the Scotch 4 knights, and then we'll switch to the Italian game, and yeah, getting closer and closer to the Rulo Pass at the end. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to your comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks for watching.